It's another edition of the Intangibles. It is a great Wednesday here on the Arrowhead Addict podcast network. Joining me, as always, it's my good friend Christian Ainsworth. Christian, how's that little dopamine hit coming of DeAndre Hopkins coming to the Kansas City Chiefs?
It's not I'm not getting as high as I would have if it was a year or two ago, but like, dude, we finally got a guy to replace Rashee Rice.
Well, I tell you what, like if I could pick a time for trade news to happen, having it hit right in the morning, like I was blurry eyed. One thing you'll learn whenever you become a father, especially of young children, is like wake up time is no longer an optional thing. Like I wake up to people yelling at me, get up, crying babies, my toddler's in bed yelling dad. Like there is no like wake up to the birds chirping type of vibe. Like it is very much wake up, hit the ground running. And I just glance at my phone, and of course, I have push notifications on for all the big news breakers in the NFL. And I didn't see like DeAndre Hopkins to the Chiefs. I just saw Hopkins to the champs or something like that, and I was like DeAndre Hopkins, like wait, the Chiefs are the champions. I was like, let's check this out here. I was like, oh, so like Chiefs news breaking before you even got your first cup of coffee in you. It's a great way to start a day, especially a Wednesday. Great way to get you through a hump day.
Oh yeah, I was really surprised too. I get up really early. I get up at like 5:45 a.m.
All right, look,
And
let's calm down with the bragging, okay?
well,
We're really impressed.
I'm just saying, if it was up before I was awake, almost wasn't sure it happened. I also have like Tom Pelissero, Adrian Wojnarowski for basketball, who's now
Even though,
retired.
yeah, I was gonna say now you just get Division II basketball updates from him.
Yeah. But I was like, oh my God, okay, cool. DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah.
Yeah, to be fair, I wake up at midnight and 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. with my daughter. So like technically I'm grinding all the time. Never stop grinding, just taking little naps. Uh yeah, but it was a great way to start the day off. But little conspiracy theory. I don't know if you've seen this, but Titans pulled DeAndre Hopkins pretty quickly in the game on Sunday. He didn't play nearly as many snaps as he normally did. He was on the sideline for most of the fourth quarter. And on Sunday, he posted on the way to the game a video on his Instagram of him listening to a Taylor Swift song called 22. And the caption reads, rumor has it. So
Oh,
was Veach cooking? Was he cooking this up like before the game even started? Before the Juju injury? Was he cooking this up, you think?
I mean, that makes sense, right? Like we've been down weapons for a minute. Like Juju Smith-Schuster got injured. I know it was pre that, but like now it makes all the sense in the world. It's almost like this had been in the mix for a while. This seems like something that had been talked about and worked on for months, maybe.
Yeah, I someone said like he made the call the instant Sky Moore dropped that ball. He was like, all right, I've seen enough. Like he's in the booth in San Francisco. He's like, all right, make the call. But yes, we will be talking all thing DeAndre Hopkins today. We're also going to be talking a little bit about Patrick Mahomes' play. I've got a piece coming out tomorrow where I reviewed every single one of his interceptions, which unfortunately is 8 this year. So we're going to be talking about what's going on with Patrick Mahomes. And then we're going to finish off with something, a little segment that we used to do on our old show called Where We Were Right, Where We Were Wrong. And at the very end, I have a very special presentation that I will be sharing with you about the Las Vegas Raiders. Before we get to that, although we've got some good stuff to talk about today from our friends over at Underdog. Yeah, that's right. We're back with Underdog, and there's so many great things to love about Underdog. First off, one thing that I've started playing around with, there's nothing worse than a vulture running back situation. We all have this. The Patriots were really bad about this. You get a running back, that's the starter. Let's say the Ravens were playing on Monday Night Football. Derrick Henry, he's done all the heavy lifting to get the ball to the goal line. Then they do a little jet motion or something like that, toss the ball out to Justice Hill. Well, with Underdog, if your designated running back is supposed to score, but then they get vultured by the backup, guess what? Underdog will rescue your entry. It's currently Boosttober on Underdog, and there's like a promo that you can use every day when you play. You just got to check the calendar. From now until October 27th, you can use Boosttober, your profit on all NBA entries as well. The NBA, it started last night. This is the best month in sports. You got NBA, playoff baseball, NFL, college football, hockey started the other day. I've been loving using Underdog for baseball, by the way, because my beloved Royals are eliminated from the playoffs and we have the World Series literally from hell with the Dodgers and Yankees, you can pick higher or lower on the stars of the World Series to add a little bit of juice to that game as you're watching the evil empire play. One that I like, Shohei Ohtani, 1.5 bases Friday when this podcast is released. that's going to be easy. 2 singles, a double, a triple, a homer. He's probably going to do at least 2 of those things. Or you can take Garrett Cole, 4.5 strikeouts. You like the higher, you like the lower. Make that game more fun. Download the app and use the code Arrowhead Addict. That's all one word to get up to $1,000 in cash bonus instantly. Again, that's Arrowhead Addict, all one word to get up $1,000 in cash instantly. Select higher or lower on your favorite player and cash in on Underdog. Must be 18 years or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.npcgambling.org or Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. All right, so as we said, DeAndre Hopkins, he's a Chief. This is all but done and official. Let's just talk about it a little bit. What do we expect from DeAndre Hopkins, the Kansas City Chief? First off, do we think that he's going to play in the game on Sunday against the Las Vegas Raiders?
Oh yeah, probably. I would imagine it's going to be in a limited capacity. Like
For me, like I'm thinking probably 10 to 12 snaps, maybe a couple of packages that he feels comfortable in. Also, like this is a veteran and a guy who's kind of been fighting off some injuries early in the season this year for him too. So if he doesn't soup up much here, I'm not too concerned. Obviously, if they lose to the Raiders, we're gonna have a much different opinion. But this is a long play, right? So for him, for most of his like projections in my head, there's 11 games left in the season, but I'm thinking a 10-game season for him, regular season wise.
oh yeah, yeah, and he's not going to be targeted early or often. I think in this game, he might have a few like back shoulder fades. We know DeAndre Hopkins' game, so like, throw it up to him, let him make a catch, and then profit off of it. Get some of those guys off Kelsey's back.
Well, I think that this is an interesting player. I think one thing that makes me feel confident about this move from the Chiefs is they've been on this path for a little bit, wanting DeAndre Hopkins. They flirted with him in free agency. There was people talking about them trading for him this year. They finally get the trade done. This has been a long time coming. So obviously they see something that they like in his game that fits their offense, but we've not really seen a wide receiver like this in the Chiefs offense. A big, contested catch, lack of separation route runner who wins with leverage and against press man coverage. I mean, he does some things that the Chiefs like, obviously finding soft spots in zone and sitting down, but we've not really seen Patrick Mahomes utilize a guy like this. What do you think of the fit in the Chiefs offense, and where do you think he's going to be most effective?
So there were a few different guys that I kind of looked at whenever I looked at the DeAndre Hopkins trade, where it's like, man, did I love anybody else? Because I don't just want to be, oh my God, the Kansas City Chiefs got DeAndre Hopkins. He, at one point when he was 25, was the best wide receiver in the league. And I'm so happy he's in the red and gold. Like I was trying to maybe comp him to some other people that I thought maybe good on the Chiefs. And I was looking at like a better version of Laviska Shenault, or like a better, more savvy route runner. Who is that guy that got drafted by the Titans? Trey Burks.
Treylon Burks, yeah.
Yeah, like these bigger slot guys who can move around the field. Plus, like that guy plus. I think that he's probably going to be utilized like on a lot of outbreaking routes. If I had to guess, a lot of people are kind of pigeonholing him into this like Rashee Rice role where he's going to be over the middle of the field. Oh, you haven't seen that? Oh man.
Well, no, I just don't think that that's where he's going to be used at. Like, I pulled some stats on him, just kind of did a data pull. 148 of his snaps this year have been out wide, just 29 in the slot, which he's done some nice things in the slot last year whenever they were putting him in there. He ranked 17th in the NFL with yards per route run at 2.11, according to FTN. PFF had him at 1.64. Take that for what you want. His 3.2 yards of average separation is ahead of teammates Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd. 3.8% catch rate over expected. So that means he's catching more balls than he's expected to based on it. And 10.8 air yards per target, which is a pretty nice average depth of target. To me, what I see here, and like we'll get to kind of where this ends, but this is the most traditional X that Kansas City has had in quite some time. I do think that with all of the Chiefs receivers, I don't think that any of them are pigeonholed. Like you see some of those offense sometimes where like a guy lines up on the same side on the same spot every single time. I won't be surprised if we see Travis Kelce run out of the slot. I won't be surprised if we see DeAndre Hopkins run out of the slot. We'll see Xavier Worthy out wide. We'll see all these guys all over the place. But I think in the most traditional sense now, you have Xavier Worthy who's going to do best in the slot. He will still run out wide because of the vertical stretch. You've got DeAndre Hopkins who's going to be that traditional X. Hollywood Brown, hopefully, fingers crossed, one day can come back and be that Y that he was. win in the intermediate spot, and then you have just kind of like Travis Kelce, you have Juju who can do the Rashee Rice thing. I think Juju is the most logical Rashee Rice replacement. Obviously, he's down with a hamstring injury, but as we said earlier, this is a long play, not just a short play.
Oh yeah, well, and I think he adds something that you can't really measure on the football field other than in completion percentage, things like that. It's like reliability. Like you look at guys like Sky Moore who haven't been successful on the roster, Kadarius Toney while he was here, and the one thing that you could say about him is they weren't reliable. Like whether that was catching the football, whether that was being in the right spot at the right time. Like DeAndre Hopkins brings you that like comfortability. He's a quarterback's best friend. It's almost like that same thing with Travis Kelce, where it's like, hey, Travis Kelce's going to read my mind. He's going to read this play exactly how I read it, and I can throw it to him. I think we're going to get a little bit of that, but on the outside, which will be a breath of fresh air.
The Kansas City Chiefs, since the start of last year, the start of the 2023 season, have dropped 39 passes from wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins in that same amount of time has dropped 5. That's a significant difference. I get that, like, there's more players there, so the numbers are doing some work there, but 5 dropped passes in his time with the Titans. This is a great trait that he has, and hopefully that will instill some confidence in Patrick Mahomes. We're going to talk a little bit about his play. That's something that I think he's lacking. We've seen him have confidence in players before, obviously Kelce being the most, but he threw some FU throws to Tyreek Hill at times where just go up and get it. So he has that in his bag. It's not that he's forgotten how to do that. So DeAndre Hopkins, maybe we see that trust. Like, I'll never forget, and we've besmirched his name enough here. The first game that Kadarius Toney was a Kansas City Chief against that Jaguars team, he was throwing up contested catches to him like I've not seen him do to almost any other player. So it seems to be a chemistry and a trust thing. This is probably a guy that Pat has wanted. And I think one area that may be really underrated that we're talking about DeAndre Hopkins is you talk about the intelligence, you talk about how diverse his route tree is. This could be a guy that would be a really good when a play breaks down. When Mahomes breaks the pocket and we're playing backyard football, this could be a place that he really eats because he's not going to drop the pass. He's got a good idea of knowing where the quarterback's going to go with the ball, and he's going to catch it when he gets it. And that really, I think, is going to be the best thing is when the ball hits his hands, you feel like he should catch it.
Oh yeah, he is one of the most sure-handed wide receivers in NFL history. Like the dude is known for catching contested catches and catching them often. And when you look at a play that breaks down, he might not have great separation. He might be, I mean, I think you tweeted it out earlier today. His separation was 3.2 yards, 3.2 yards. So, I mean, that's not fantastic. It's not awful. But when the play breaks down and there's a lack of separation, Mahomes can just throw it to him and he will. That's his game. There's open and then there's nuke open where he's covered all over me and I catch it one-handed on the sideline.
Yeah, and I think like the biggest thing this does is this just provides the ability for teams not to be able to play press man coverage against the Chiefs. With McCole Hardman, with Xavier Worthy, we've seen Xavier Worthy get knocked off his routes very easily by press man coverage. It's a place that he needs to grow. You can see, you go to my Twitter at Price A Carter. I tweeted out every single DeAndre Hopkins catch. One of the first catches you're going to see is a press coverage rep from Sauce Gardner, and DeAndre Hopkins wins on a slant. Done. Yep. Absolute cinema. The meme, like that's exactly what you want to see. So this just makes the Chiefs more diverse. And let's talk about the compensation for a quick. It's a 4th round pick that can it's a 5th round pick that can conditionally turn into a 4th round pick. I think we said on the draft episode last week, which is evergreen, by the way. So go back and listen to that if you want to start and get into the draft content. Day 3 picks, we are not concerned about giving those up this year with this quality of class. So even if it is like, 5th round pick, you can go find some 5th round picks that have done some nice things in Kansas City, like Mike Dana. But 4th round picks, that could be Jaden Hicks, that could be Jared Wiley, that could be L'Jarius Sneed. But there's also been some 4th round picks that haven't done a whole lot here. And this might be a year that you'd be a little bit more aggressive with day 3 picks. So I'm totally okay with the compensation. Nobody in Kansas City is going to be upset if it's a day 4 pick or a round 4 pick, because that means that they'll have made the Super Bowl. Those are the conditions, that they make the Super Bowl and he plays 60% of the snaps, which wouldn't just be great if the Chiefs just blow a team out in the Super Bowl and they get to bench DeAndre Hopkins. He plays like 45% of the snaps and like they finesse it, the ultimate finesse. That'd be great.
Oh, that would be incredible. That's a total Veach move too. Like,
and then use the Titans 3rd round pick that they gave us for L'Jarius Sneed. That also would be great.
Yeah, so, that would be really cool.
So real quick, you did a little bit of film review on him. You looked at some of the cut ups and stuff. Anything that really jumped out to you about his game, or anything that you think is really noteworthy about what he's put on tape for 2024?
So I went back to that Green Bay game where they were playing Malik Willis. Jordan Love was hurt. He was the main wide receiver. Hit 6 targets, 7 receptions. I just went through that whole entire thing and charted all of his snaps. Looked at the routes he was running, whether he was on the line, whether he was off the line. And what I came out to is there's 18 snaps in that game where he is playing the X receiver, he's on the line of scrimmage, and then 9 where he's off. So kind of a higher percentage of him playing that slot wide receiver. I know that we expect him to come in here and play that X, but this just shows he's a very, very versatile player still. And you might know that he's had an MCL sprain, had that in the preseason. I think it was against the Bears. Um, that has not slowed him down at all. I'm looking at all of the different routes he ran, and on the line, comeback, drag, fade, post, switch, corner. Like he has a very, very diverse route tree that he used in that game and was still getting open. Let me see of the plays where he was on the line of scrimmage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plays. He ran a route and he was not open while he was on the line of scrimmage. He played Jair Alexander. He played a tough Green Bay defense. He was not open 3 times. Look at whenever he's off the line, ran a sluggo, switch, post, sail route, dig route. Those are very, very in-breaking, out-breaking routes. That's all over the place. Only not open on the post that he ran. The dig that he ran, I put DeAndre Hopkins open, but not necessarily open because he did catch the ball, heavily contested, but that's DeAndre Hopkins, man. Like, he's going to make the catch. If the ball is thrown and it hits his hands, he's making the catch. So I think that he didn't look super sluggish. Very much still a player that could come in. He played very, very limited snaps, but still a guy. He had 73 yards. Like, this is a guy you can kind of lean on in some of these tough game situations where, hey, DeAndre, we need you to go out there. We need you to beat Marlon Humphrey straight up. Press man, beat him. He can do it. Hey, we need you to come across the middle of the field on your drag and catch it and get some yak. He can still do that too. I don't think he's going to be playing 70, 80, 90% of the snaps, but like, he's still very, very much a guy who's spry, really, really wise in his route running, and can make huge impact plays.
This is a guy who had over 1,000 yards last year, playing predominantly with Will Levis. If you go back, if you really want to watch a game to make you optimistic about DeAndre Hopkins, go back and watch Will Levis's first start. Will Levis just bombs away on that start last year, just chucking the ball downfield. And DeAndre Hopkins was winning vertically and quite a bit, like down the field. So you're talking about his legs and how they still look as far as his burst goes. There's stuff there still. He's not absolutely cooked in that way. I think that there's still some things to be had there.
Oh yeah, well, in like if you're comparing him to Travis Kelce, who was in his same draft class, you look at him and you look at both of them, you're like, man, these guys are pretty agile for their age. I mean, Travis Kelce still at times looks like that dominant, 27-year-old that was on the field. DeAndre Hopkins still has that too. So if we can get both of those guys to have a vintage game, perhaps in the playoffs where we need them the most, that's I don't want to say unstoppable duo because I don't want to put a hex on the Chiefs season, but oh my God, I cannot imagine them lining up on the same side of the field and being like, hey, one of you is going to be open. We don't even have to run routes on the backside. You can't bracket them both. And then just
And yeah,
shucking it down the
that's
field.
something that they've really needed is someone who can win ISO man, right? Like they've not had
Yeah.
that guy. They
Yeah.
can be isolated one on one because they're going to need to shield fade coverage over to the stretching of Worthy or whatever. So just puts more stress on defenses. Are you familiar with the GIF? It's a GIF of Draymond Green talking to Kevin Durant, and he's like whispering, he's like
Oh,
tapping on his
yeah.
shoulder.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to imitate that just for a second. Just think for a second for me, okay? I don't want to say it too loud because I don't want the injury gods to hear this. Just imagine with me for a second. DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster, McCole Hardman, Justin Watson, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, Samaje Perine, all on the field together in the playoffs.
Unstoppable.
I like it. I like how it looks. Rashee Rice isn't coming back, so there's a reason why his name's not put on there. But I like the way that sounds a lot. You've got someone who can win in the intermediate part of the field with speed and route running with Hollywood Brown. You have a deep field stretching option in Xavier Worthy, who also makes you really like nervous in the horizontal stretch. You've got someone who can win ISO'd man. You've got someone who can win in zone with Juju Smith-Schuster, Travis Kelce. You've got two running backs that will really punish you if you want to play light boxes. You've got a good pass catching, pass protecting running back. Oh, and like one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Well, and
I, I
I'll
like the way
I'll
that
give you
sounds.
one better too. Uh, or not Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins played on the same Cardinals team. They have some familiarity with each other and how they're going to run routes. You add that with a guy like Travis Kelce and a guy like Xavier Worthy who can house one at any point in time, dude, that is lethal.
Yeah,
Do we
to
know if
your
he's coming back or not?
uh,
Hollywood Brown?
James Palmer tweeted out that there's optimism that he will be back. So,
Okay. All right.
um, as you were saying, in 2022, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins were teammates. Despite that, they only played 3 games together. Hollywood Brown got injured. DeAndre Hopkins got suspended for PEDs. They only ended up playing 3 games together that season. There's stats in those games. Hollywood Brown, so this is 3 games worth of stats, was 11 catches for 110 yards. DeAndre Hopkins was 15 catches for 143 yards. But there's one catch. Their quarterbacks in those games were Colt McCoy and something named Trace McSorley. So those are the stats they put up with the two of them on the field together. That was the vision that the Cardinals had when they traded away a first round pick for Hollywood Brown, was those two guys. So yeah, there's some familiarity there, even though they didn't play on the same field a whole lot together. That next year, Hopkins left and signed with the Titans. But yes, some really exciting stuff to think about. And if you're the Chiefs, again, long game. You just try to get that group of offensive skill players to the playoffs healthy. It's a really exciting proposition that gives you some margin of error for a defense that's playing really well.
Oh yeah, and I think that when we're going to talk about Patrick Mahomes here in a second, but I think that allows him to kind of feel more comfortable, and you're not trying to force things like he has been over the past couple of games. You're not trying to do some things that maybe that little hitch at the top of the step back where you need to make a quick read. Like, you're not double thinking that. You're not thinking about it too much. It's more clean. It's off the rip. It's exciting. If we have all of that and Patrick Mahomes kind of gets in the swing of things again, like this is a team, man. This is a three-peat team.
Okay, so last question then. He has 173 yards and 1 touchdown right now. Essentially, he has 11 or 10 games remaining, however you want to look at it. What do you think his stats are with the Chiefs? What will we decide this trade is a success? Obviously, winning the Super Bowl is kind of like the big caveat, but as far as a player, what do you think his stats are going to be, and do you think it will be successful?
I think if you get 600 yards out of him at this point in the season, you're feeling really, really good. I think that if he comes in
600 more or 600
600
including the
more,
okay.
600 more.
So about 759 is what you're thinking.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you'd be even okay if he gave you like 500 total yards for the season, and he's just that reliable target that gets you a first down when you need it at the end of the
Chain
game.
mover.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah. So and maybe 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns. I think he's going to be a killer red zone threat. I think that's really where they're going to utilize him this first game. Like, maybe they drive down the field on the Raiders, get him just a back shoulder fade. Mahomes knows how to throw it. Hopkins can catch it, and he's handing it to his blind mom in the stands.
Such a weird call out. I really
No,
remember that.
I've
I know what
envisioned this,
I know
dude.
what you're talking about. I don't think there'll be quite the glow up for DeAndre Hopkins' mom as it was Xavier Worthy's mom. Probably a
No,
little bit of
probably
an
not.
age gap there. I'm right where you are. Like 50 yards a game feels like the mark. So I'm gonna call it 10 games because I just don't know what they're gonna get out of him this Sunday. 50 yards a game, that's 500 yards. And like 5 touchdowns. So he ends the season with about 715 or so yards and about 6 touchdowns. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think, again, the context of those yards is just going to be really big. Where they come, what moments they come in. And if you get more out of them, you're going to feel great. And, thinking down the road here, the Chiefs chose a wide receiver that was a rental because of the salary cap implications and what they had to work with. But there'll certainly be an avenue for him to come back if they want to, because I think they're going to need someone in the stead of Rashee Rice's suspension slash injury. So be really fun to see him on the field. Really looking forward to it. Before we get going again, we want to talk real quick about our friends over at Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see, it's never what you get. Somewhere between the big store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about those gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. So say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected coverage, and say hello to Mint Mobile. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/arrowhead. That's mintmobile.com/arrowhead, one word, and cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/arrowhead. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. So we were talking about Patrick Mahomes, the guy who's going to be throwing DeAndre Hopkins the ball. And I don't know about you, but I'm kind of tired of seeing someone screenshot a quarterback's stats and put them next to Patrick Mahomes and act like that's better. Like Bo Nix, I've seen Drake May. Just pick like the least respectful quarterback imaginable and comparing them to. Like I saw someone say today, well, can DeAndre Hopkins tackle the person who's receiving Patrick Mahomes interceptions? And I think that there's a ball knower test here as far as how many people are actually watching games and what are the context of the interceptions and where they've come. People just look at the stat lines. We all know, but here on the Intangibles, it's called the Intangibles because we go beyond the box score. We go beyond the numbers and we look at the context. So tomorrow on the site, I should have an article go live that basically takes an all 22 look at every single one of his interceptions and kind of grades it on how egregious, not egregious it was, and what was on him and what wasn't on him. So, real quick, just before we get into it, what is your impression of Patrick Mahomes' play this year, Christian?
Clunky. If I was gonna give it one word, clunky. It seems like there's not a lot of trust. It seems like, and this is just, I have not gone through the all 22 for every single one of the Chiefs games and solely looked at Patrick Mahomes. But it seems like from what I've seen from the all 22 that I have watched, that he's almost, I don't want to say slow processing, right? Because I think he still sometimes makes the right reads. I think that sometimes he sees the right read and second guesses for half a second and then throws the ball somewhere else to somewhere. Maybe he thinks that, that receiver is maybe a little bit more reliable, or he's just trying to make some shit happen before the offensive line, crumbles in front of him, particularly one player. But is that something that you have found when you're watching, or is that completely?
I like the word you use, clunky. It just doesn't feel free flowing. Have you ever had a social event? This is always really hard, like big personal matters or things like that, where you have like 3 or 4 different friend groups all combining at once. You ever have that? It's very like weird feeling. You feel like, okay, I got to go over here and kind of give this person some love. Haha, yeah, work stuff. Okay, and then I'm going to come over here. Oh yeah, that was crazy in high school. Okay, yeah, college was cool. You just kind of end up like going all around, and you don't ever really feel like everyone's hanging out together. Um, that's kind of how it feels a little bit with Mahomes. It feels like he's constantly trying to get different elements of his game going instead of playing free flowing. Like there's the like intentional, okay, I'm throwing the ball deep here. I'm throwing it to Xavier Worthy. Do you see me trying to stretch the field? Okay, I'm deliberately trying to get Kelsey going here. Do you see me trying to get Travis Kelsey going? Okay, I'm going to feed Rashee Rice over the middle of the field here. And I think sometimes that's just resulted in some forced throws. And I think early in the season, some of those were showing up. Going through the interceptions, one of the biggest things I saw, like, I think if I were going to be a harsh grader, I'd say 5 of the 8 interceptions he have thrown are on him predominantly. If I was being a little lenient, I'd say 4. The 3 that are definitively on him, the interception to Roquan Smith, I think he was still trying to dirt that ball. If you look at it, like Roquan Smith goes and kind of digs it out of the dirt. I see what he's seeing with Kelsey over or Rashee Rice in the middle of the field, but Mahomes either has to like dirt it better because he's kind of throwing in the area. And also, if you look at him, Matabikwe has like his paw on Patrick Mahomes. He's stepping up into pressure there, but he's either got to dirt it better or he's got to fire that ball sooner. I see the gap, the window that he's throwing to, but it's just not there. Probably the worst interception's the one against the Bengals where Gavis Dather, the linebacker, does it. Like Mahomes is like, you can see you hear about quarterbacks' eyes all the time. He is signaling, I am throwing to Travis Kelce here, and you see the window, and like when it comes to watching all 22, if you can see the window and the quarterback is like winding up, it's too late, right? They
Yes.
basically need to
Yeah.
be anticipating the window. So the ball's still in his hand. You see the window, you see the linebacker starting to creep into that throwing lane before the ball's even released for Patrick Mahomes. That one was dead on arrival, just a bad throw. You get the interception to Justin Simmons. That one's just an inaccurate throw. A lot of his interceptions, he's underthrown on. I was pretty glad to see him overthrow Xavier Worthy the other day on that deep shot because he's been short on a lot of stuff this year. So he overthrows that one to Noah Gray in the end zone. You see where he's leading, where he could have had a touchdown on Noah Gray, but he just underthrows him. Justin Simmons gets him. The other interception in the Bengals game, Cam Taylor-Britt, that's the one that I kind of give like a 50-50 to. Like, that was a low percentage play. You've got Xavier Worthy on the outside in press coverage, no free release, no motion, trying to go against Cam Taylor-Britt, who's a pretty good corner. That play had a low percentage probability of working. Even if you love Xavier Worthy's speed, Taylor-Britt makes an incredible play, one-hand pick. I don't think that it's likely an interception in most times because of how great the play was, but I don't think it's a high percentage play. That's the one that I could go either way. The interception in the Chargers game, there's 3 guys in the area of Travis Kelce. Now, if Patrick Mahomes makes a A++ throw, I can see where he gets it, but it would have been a dime. There's cloud coverage over the top with safety. He overthrows it, the worst throw in Chiefs history, where he, ending Rashee Rice's season. Honestly, he should just be penalized for doing that. I know that that's not what was planned there, but it's what happened. Then we get to the most recent batches of interceptions. The Juju Smith-Schuster slant in the end zone hits him in the hands. Could the throw have been better? Yeah. I feel like you could say that about almost every throw on the NFL field, say minus a few. Juju Smith-Schuster's an NFL wide receiver. It hit him in the hands. Catch the damn ball. Those are risky throws over the, but he had such a clear lane there too. You see Xavier Worthy, like basically they run a mesh rub route, right, where Xavier Worthy is rubbing and just giving you an obstacle for the defender to go around to give Juju Smith-Schuster inside leverage. And the ball gets tipped. Colin Saunders makes the interception. And then the last 2 interceptions, I don't put those on him. The defender jumping up and batting the – I mean, what do you want to say? Like, be taller? Patrick Mahomes isn't short, but he's not the tallest quarterback. But the defender jumping up, knocking the ball up in the air and catching it, like, batted passes happen. And when balls get batted up in the air, it's a 50-50 proposition. Xavier Worthy falls down. Again, that was probably a low percentage play, but more high percentage than the Cam Taylor-Britt one. But you can see on the film, like Xavier Worthy falls down after the ball is in the air. Patrick Mahomes had no idea that Xavier Worthy was going to fall down there. And to kind of like complement this all, Patrick Mahomes has 8 interceptions right now. PFF has him charted with 7 turnover-worthy plays. Generally speaking, when a ball goes on the ground or is in the air, it's a 51-49 proposition that it's going to land in the defense's hands. Defenders just aren't that good at catching. Like, you always hear that, oh, that's why he plays corner, not receiver. Patrick Mahomes has, in my view, been a little unlucky here. And I think that he will have a few games that he won't have any interceptions. And he's due for a couple of those that hit a safety in the hand. He's had some bad luck. Think about it this way. Last year, he had Kadarius Toney giving the ball to players regularly, and he still had less interceptions this time than last year. He didn't have his 8th interception until the 10th game last year. So he's
surprising, honestly. Like,
yeah,
when you go back and you look at the drops, and
he's just kind of been a victim of some bad luck and then has been struggling. Like we said, I think some of these interceptions have been, okay, you want me to stretch the ball vertically here, I'm going to try to ram this into this hole with Cam Taylor-Britt. Okay, I need to get Travis Kelce going. The Swifties are tweeting at me. I need to get Kelce going. Here we go. I'm going to throw the ball to the Bengals linebacker. I'm going to throw into triple coverage with the Chargers secondary hanging over. So those are kind of my big impressions. I don't think that he's playing poorly. I definitely think he's played better before. I think he just needs the permission to play a little bit more freely. The protection is not actually as bad as I think it's been made out to be, especially once they've made the change at left tackle.
Yeah, that was going to be a major part of my analysis of him as well. Is like when they made that change to left tackle, Wanya Morris comes in and he's a little bit more seasoned, Kingsley Suamataia still pretty green. It did seem like he had a little bit more of comfortability, but then you see, Wanya getting pushed back by these pretty light defensive ends, and you go, oh, he's only given up 1 sack on the season or whatever the PFF stat is. And it's like, oh yeah, but if you count how many times he's been pushed into the front of Mahomes' legs, it's like, oh yeah, he's given up 30 of those plays this season. So yeah, do you think that he wins MVP this season? Like, because I could see he's one of the Vegas favorites. Like, a lot of people have him. We're the undefeated Chiefs. He just got, DeAndre Hopkins. Is that something that's, possible for him this season? I don't know if you can give it to him if he has a really, really poor statistical season, though, right?
I think a lot of people have gotten mad at how high Mahomes has still been in the MVP rankings. This isn't hard, guys. The team with the best quarterback is most likely to win MVP. So if you have a guy who's the quarterback of the undefeated team, he basically has to prove he's not MVP. I think, I'd be surprised if he wins it this year, factoring in that the narrative for like MVPs are narrative driven awards. And if you get a guy like Jordan Love or CJ Stroud or even like Jared Goff, who's playing really well, he's never won one before, the narrative is going to be there a little bit more for them than guys like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, Lamar's playing really well this year, but have already won a couple. So he's going to have to be better. So no, I don't think that it's likely that he wins MVP, and that's fine. I think that this would look a lot different if Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice were here. They're not. So that they just got to keep going. And to their credit, this offense is still highly efficient despite Mahomes not really playing his best football.
Yeah, well, and we have to kind of contextualize this as well. Like, even when we had Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown, well, Rashee Rice particularly, Mahomes was still kind of making these mistakes. Like, this was not an efficient offense.
I do feel it was efficient. I just feel like he would have been able to get out of these way quicker. Like, just, like, look at what he's put on tape the last couple of weeks. Keep in mind, they've played some really hard teams. Look at what he's put on tape the last couple of weeks without him. And think about what an easy button Rashee Rice was offensively. Over the middle of the field, on those slants, the manufactured touches. Like, I think the numbers would look better, especially the touchdowns. Like, I think that those probably would look a little bit better. And that's one thing I pointed out in my article too, is like, people aren't happy with his touchdown to interception ratio. Part of the reason is he's just not throwing a lot of touchdowns. Kareem Hunt has 3 touchdowns since coming onto the team. They're much better at running the ball in short yardage. They're not using the little push pass and the shovel passes that they've used at the red zone before, which have always been in part of Patrick Mahomes' touchdown numbers. It's okay that they stack the numbers down there, all right? They all count the same. When he goes into into Canton, they won't be like, oh, too many push passes, sorry. But they're not doing that this year. So that's another reason why. And I mean, one of those touchdown passes is DeWanya Morris. So they're not really doing a whole bunch of gimmicky stuff. They're running the ball a lot down there, which is fine. Again, we're long game, right? Not like numbers. Who cares if someone tweets out Drake May's stats compared to Patrick Mahomes' stats? It's week, what is it, 8 in the NFL? Not worried about it. So we have some things to confess to. This is our segment where we were right, where we were wrong. Everyone wants to pound their chest when they do something right. Not a lot of people want to come clean when they do things wrong. So we're going to share 2 takes each of where we were right and 2 takes each where we were wrong. Christian, would you like to lead off with something you were right about so far this season? It's going to be Chiefs or NFL centric.
Sure. So before we get to the self-deprecation, I'm going to start off with Kingsley Suamataia, who I really had as a a very talented left tackle prospect in the 2024 NFL draft. I said that he was not ready. If he's starting week 1, we're having some problems. Definitely talented, has the ability to become that left tackle that we would really like to have for the future. But I mean, it was pretty apparent early on that he was not, going to come in and be Laramie Tunsil for us. He lost his starting spot in week 3 versus the Falcons. Wanya stepped in, not saying that he's been incredible either, but he's come in and at least been a little bit more serviceable, a little bit more reliable. And he was still getting beat on some of the same stuff that he was getting beat on in college. So, you like to see him. He definitely made some moves upward. He trended upward, but just not there yet. And so I'm really happy that my pre-draft analysis and then going into the season analysis was spot on.
The pure drop back number for him, which was like I think it was like 200 in all of his years in college. The RPO heavy nature of BYU, like it's just something that I couldn't get past. And I think, you know, the Chiefs, the way that they handled him all offseason was a reason to make you doubt yourself and feel like they had all this confidence in him. But yeah, it's something that did not go the way that they seemed to foreshadow that it was going to go. Okay, so one thing I was right about in the offseason, I tweeted that the Chiefs should really bring in Samaje Perine if he's cut, and that he would make a lot of sense for the Chiefs. And then I also said the Chiefs should consider bringing in Juju Smith-Schuster or Marquez Valdes-Scantling if they are released from their teams. I'm going to take the W on those two things because Samaje Perine, while he's not been a huge revelation in the offense yet, he fills a very important role, pass protection. And where would this team be without Juju Smith-Schuster right now? I know that they weren't with him last week, but he's already scored 2 touchdowns, or at least 1 touchdown. I can't remember. He's already scored a touchdown and had a huge game against the Saints. And you're now looking forward to him coming back and relying on him again in the Rashee Rice role. So I'm very glad that those players are here. It made a lot of sense for them to come back. And by the way, whenever I like say these things, people, Juju, his knees are just gone, just completely, like he'll never, like it's just so funny how like 2 years ago I said, hey, I don't think the Chiefs should extend Juju. Just let him walk this year. Let someone else pay him. How could you say such a thing? He's great. He's awesome. He's like Michael Crabtree in this offense. A real thing that someone said to me. How could you say that? Then he goes to the Patriots for a year. Done, washed, awful, trash. Never want him back again. His knees are gone, and now he's a Chief again. So now we love him. But yeah, both those guys were guys I thought made sense to bring back. I also said MVS, which the Saints saved us from that one. But
Thank God.
here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are. Those guys are on the team and productive members of the team.
For the record, this isn't my where I was wrong, but I was 100% on the bye Juju Smith-Schuster hype train. And yeah, dude, proved me wrong, man. He has been a legit force on the offense and kind of picked up some of the slack from when Rashee Rice went down. So fantastic. So where I was wrong, I really thought Kareem Hunt would never be on the roster again. I truly believed it after he was cut. With the whole situation that he was in, we don't need to rehash all of it, obviously. But in the hotel, it happens. It's caught on video. TMZ releases it. I was almost certain. I mean, there had been plenty of times where Kareem Hunt is mentioned in, oh man, maybe, Nick Chubb's tearing it up over there. The Browns suck. Like they might try to get rid of him and the Chiefs could bring him back. And I just went, yeah, no chance. Never. It's not coming. It's not going to happen. And then eventually a key injury happens on the offense and there's some familiarity and they do what I thought they never would do. And they brought him back. And not only that, but he's been very, very good in the offense. Just one of those things that you kind of have a gut feeling about. You kind of know how the organization operates and then they do something different and it, makes you look like an idiot, which I'm happy to look like an idiot when Kareem Hunt is basically running the offense for the Chiefs.
Yeah, you don't have to feel bad about that one. I don't know many people that thought that was ever going to happen. I think it caught most people off guard. At this time last year, anybody suggesting that the Chiefs bring back Kareem Hunt, I mean, they'd be highly ridiculed, posted on Chiefs Reddit, just burned at the stake, just like god awful things that anyone would suggest that. So I have no idea why anyone would think that would happen. But yeah, I mean, it just didn't seem likely. And also the scenario had to be unique. It does speak a little bit to like what were the Chiefs doing at running back during training camp? They had Isaiah Pacheco. They did not have Samaje Perine. They had to wait for their rival team to cut instead of trade Samaje Perine, which they tried to do. And then Isaiah Pacheco goes down. One running back, their lead back, but one of the running back goes down. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's on the injured list, and they go for Kareem Hunt. It's just was a little strange, that whole kind of how it all happened and how quickly they went for Kareem Hunt. It just didn't seem like they were that sparse to like pull that lever. It kind of makes me think that certain people in the building, cough, Patrick Mahomes, have been lobbying for this and that this was a good enough reason to do it.
Oh, yeah. Well, that and like his record after he left kind of speaks for himself. He had one incident where he was driving too fast. I think everybody's seen that video where he's talking about how it should have been him in the
yeah,
Super
I think
Bowl.
it was a DUI too. If I
Oh,
remember
was
right.
it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But either way, I mean, breaking. NFL guys aren't all people that we want to babysit our kids. We can dance around as much as we want, but it is what it is. All right. Where I was wrong is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Holy hell, they're a bad football team. They are terrible on defense. Trevor Lawrence has not taken another step. And by the way, this is with like Brian Thomas Jr. looking like a superstar, and they're still just dreadful. They can't run the ball. Their offensive line is still bad despite investing picks in it with guys like Anton Harrison and Trevor Lawrence. Just put him on fraud watch. It has never come together for this guy. And Doug Peterson was an alpha, I thought. I thought there was a guy who was going to come in and establish a culture. And instead, he looks like he's just like prolonging his golf game when he's up there. He clearly is not into Trevor Lawrence. I had them being the team in the AFC South over the Texans. My thought was okay, they had expectations the last year and they fell short. This is the year. Now they know how to handle the pressure. They've made some moves I like in the offseason. They go get a guy like Gabe Davis who can just be a field stretcher. Brian Thomas, you still got Christian Kirk, Evan, I thought it made sense. And I like the new defensive coordinator. I thought he was going to use the personnel better. And instead, I'm honestly amazed that Doug Peterson got to come back to the United States as the Jaguars coach after being in London for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's a really tough situation. And I kind of you influenced me, Price, for my Dynasty Fantasy Football League because I saw Trevor Lawrence sitting there and it's a super flex. So I need 2 quarterbacks. And I went, Trevor Lawrence. Oh, yeah, pretty young. He's like 24, 25 years old. Lots of upside. Price seems to think this is going to be a superstar offense. I mean, they have Doug Peterson, for Christ's sake. And then I take him and he's done nothing but break my heart in every single game that he plays. So
it's not
I don't
great.
know that. Yeah. So for my next, I was right. Gloating a little bit here. Impact of Xavier Worthy. I was not super high on him in the draft. I saw him as somebody who was kind of a utility player. But with the addition of Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice coming over the middle of the field, being that, zone beater guy, I saw him as a guy who could really, really make plays. And I think I had him at 800 yards total in our preseason predictions going into the season with the upside of getting to 1,000 if something, disastrous were to happen. He's 6 games in, got 198 receiving yards and 47 rushing yards with a bunch of touchdowns. So right about 250, kind of midway through the year. This is suiting up to be kind of exactly what I predicted. And, he's affecting the game in ways that we're, not used to seeing somebody affect the game for the Chiefs, at least since Tyreek Hill has left. And he looks explosive. I don't know if he's going to hold up. He's still a lot of season to play, but definitely on the right track.
His impact goes beyond the numbers, right? I always thought that his high end was at his top end, he's a high end wide receiver too.
Yeah.
I don't just say this because of the build, but Devontae Smith, where it's a player if you're playing that team, you're going to feel his impact on and off the field when he's there and when he's not. But he's not a guy that is keeping you awake at night. I think in a way he does because of what he can do down the field. But until they start hitting on those passes more routinely, right now, I think that he's just kind of like what you said, a player who has utility, who has use, but isn't a guy that you're trying to run the full offense through. And I think we saw that in San Francisco. When he was the most targeted receiver in the game, the results didn't really yield the process there. So, all right, my next where I was right was the Broncos being the second best team in the AFC West. Everyone was all in on the Chargers. Newsflash: the Broncos are about to be 5-3 because they play the Jags or they play the Panthers this week. So that is going to be, and Bryce Young is starting against that defense. Pat Surtain is back. Look out. So I continue to be really uninspired by what the offense looks like, but I do think that the defense is good enough, and Bo Nix, he can game manage. He can, get that ball to the receiver behind the line of scrimmage and hand the ball off. So I think they're a French playoff team. I think they probably come home around 9-8, around that area. They've got some tougher games coming up. They got games against the Chiefs, the Ravens. It will get tougher, but to me, the Chargers hype, it was just too early. And a lot of people like the Chargers, and I get who's got it better than us? Nobody. Everyone likes Harbaugh, and I get it. And Justin Herbert's every hipster's favorite quarterback. but the roster is just so depleted. And I think you saw that on Monday night. For those of us that were still sober and awake, I'm not sure if I was both, but I did watch that game. And I saw enough to realize that their receivers were just absolutely letting Justin Herbert down. I don't put this on Justin Herbert. I put it on a roster that is gutted and doing things that don't necessarily complement Justin Herbert all the time with Greg Roman. So with that being said, Broncos are the second best team in the AFC West. They still aren't going to win it because the Chiefs are going to win it because they're the Chiefs, but they're the best team, the second best team in the AFC West.
Yeah, bold prediction, by the way. Like, I don't know of anybody that was talking about Bo Nix leading the Broncos to being the second best team in the AFC West, and possibly
Patrick Surtain is leading the Broncos to the second.
Okay,
yeah, let's get it straight here, okay? Let's not give the credit, okay? He's a passenger on the vehicle that is Javonte Williams and Audric Estime and Baron Browning and some really good players on defense and some really good scheme on the defensive side. And you know, they basically almost did this with Russell Wilson last year, right? Like they were doing pretty well until they actively benched Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but when you see Jim Harbaugh and you see Justin Herbert, you know, the eye starts to wander, man. Like I was hell-bent.
The khakis. Get
yeah, it's got to be. I don't know about that, but all right. So my last, where I was wrong, I was way too low on Tershawn Wharton. Like if you have been watching the Chiefs games at all, he's making 1 or 2 impact plays a game. He's tied for first with defensive linemen and forced fumbles. He has 2 sacks on the season for a backup defensive tackle. Like that's pretty good. I mean, granted, he has Chris Jones. Charles Omenihu will be coming back, so it'll give him a little bit less pressure. You know, he'll be able to do those one-on-ones. But like, I remember us talking about and ranking these players in the preseason or before the season started, and saying Tershawn Wharton, quality backup, like just a guy that can come in, give you solid reps. I still think that that's his floor, but he's showing some things now where you're like, oh, I didn't know you could impact the game in that way at this point in time. Does that make any sense? It's like, the timeliness of when he's peaking in a game is something that, I mean, you see Chris Jones do, you see Frank Clark do. Not saying he has the exact same impact, but situationally, he's been very, very good for the team.
Yeah, if you know anybody who was expecting Tershawn Wharton to be one of the most efficient pass rushers in the league, they're a liar because nobody saw this coming, and he has completely turned his game around this year.
Yes.
And it's been a revelation for the Chiefs in the pass rush, and it's been needed. So props to him for putting in the work. Guy who's earned himself a lot of money this year. My last where I was wrong was the impact of Jaden Hicks. I know he just had an interception, but he's barely seen the field, played very minimal defensive snaps. I thought this was the next X factor for the Chiefs. In fact, I even wrote an article about how he could be the secret weapon against the Ravens because of his size, being able to, be used in the game against Lamar running and Derrick Henry. I really thought that this was the next Swiss Army knife for the Chiefs defense. And I do think that's coming, but it's much more clear to me that his path is replacing Justin Reed, which Justin Reed left that game injured a little bit. And Jaden Hicks comes in and gets an interception. Also, shout out Chris Rowland Wallace for coming up with a big interception. 2 Chiefs have interceptions before Trent McDuffie, all-pro Trent McDuffie, which is still kind of crazy to me. It's just bad luck on his behalf, honestly. But yeah, I'm not down on the player. I still think he'll be a very good player, but I thought the impact we would feel this year, and so far it's not been felt other than an interception.
Well, to be fair, where's he supposed to slot in? I understand he's like the Justin Reed replacement, but so he's replacing Brian Cook. I mean,
I thought his role was to replace the safety that came from Tampa, who's now with the Bills.
Edwards, Mike Edwards.
Yeah, Mike Edwards. And I just thought, I guess the thing is that Shamari Connor is on the field a lot playing the slot, but I was thinking more of him just as a slot corner. Then you've got 2 safeties and that third safety. And I mean, Mike Edwards played quite a few snaps, but also Brian Cook got hurt. I've just not seen him on the field. I expected to see him some. We've almost seen him none.
Yeah. So still a great player though. When he came in, he was given quality snaps.
Pretty excited to see where he's going to be next year. Okay, so we have a special presentation today. This came to me. This is inspired by our friends over at It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. Shout out to Austin and Taylor. They are a fan-sided podcast as well. They do this type of thing every once in a while. This came to me in the shower. I was sitting here thinking about just all the stuff that the Raiders have been through in the last couple of years, and it just kept coming to me in waves. I was like, I just need to start writing this down and read it all out. So I spent about an hour on this. It will not take an hour to read, so don't take out the AirPod yet. But I would like to cook the Raiders for a little bit. I would like to roast the Raiders. Marty Schottenheimer built this Kansas City Chiefs team and Marty Ball around Raiders week and hating the Raiders. And the Raiders are so putrid, and the Chiefs are adding DeAndre Hopkins. They're 6-0. They're the back-to-back Super Bowl champs. They're going for a three-peat. There's not even any riz, as the kids say, to this rivalry. Nobody. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Not sure you're using that correctly,
Yeah,
but I like the spirit.
There's no riz short for charisma. I know that. There's no juice to this rivalry anymore. So I wanted to bring back the juice. It is Raiders week, and it's time to hate the Las Vegas from Oakland Raiders. So we're going to start this timeline back in 2018. Patrick Mahomes becomes the starter for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Raiders fire Jack Del Rio because he went to the playoffs in 2016, but of course the Raiders lost. They fired Jack Del Rio and hire John Gruden out of the Monday Night Football booth, who hasn't been coaching in years, and sign him to the largest head coaching contract in the NFL, very public, 10-year, $100 million contract, which surely he lives that contract out, right? And then in that year, right before roster cutdown day, the Raiders trade Khalil Mack, a defensive player of the year candidate or winner, to the Bears for a 2019 first round pick, which became Josh Jacobs, a 2020 first round pick, which became Damon Arnett, and a 2020 third round pick, which became Brian Edwards. The big addition of the 2018 Raiders was Marshawn Lynch. Yes, that Marshawn Lynch was on the Raiders. He rushes for 376 yards and 3 touchdowns before getting hurt and outperformed by washed-up Doug Martin. That same year, they trade a wide receiver by the name of Amari Cooper. He's a pretty good player. After 6 games, they trade him for a first-round pick to the Cowboys for a first-round pick that would eventually become Jonathan Abram. The Raiders go 4-12, lose to the Chiefs by a combined 39 points twice that season. So 2 games totaling 39 points. And Patrick Mahomes wins MVP, loses in overtime of the AFC Championship game. Surely it gets better in 2019, right? Another year of John Gruden. Well, in that year, the Raiders traded 3rd and a 5th round pick for all-pro wide receiver Antonio Brown. They signed him to a new deal of 3 years and $50 million with over $30 million guaranteed for him to never play a single game for them. He freezes his feet in a cryogenic chamber. He calls his general manager a cracker at training camp. He refuses to wear an NFL legal helmet, and he's released before he ever plays a game for the Las Vegas Raiders, all for him to go and catch passes from Tom Brady in New England and then eventually Tampa Bay and win a Super Bowl. They shock the NFL draft world by taking Clelin Ferrell, a projected back into the first rounder or early second round player, 4th overall. They take a running back with their second first round pick, Josh Jacobs at 24, and then they take a safety at pick 27, Jonathan Abram. So they get a defensive tackle, a running back, and a safety with 3 first round picks. Talk about positional value. The Raiders leave Oakland after being there for a long time. They leave the Coliseum, also known as the Black Hole, with fans throwing trash onto the field as the players leave the field because they just lost to the Gardner Minshew Jaguars to be eliminated from the playoffs, and the players are fighting on the field. They're in the mix for the playoffs, but they collapse and lose 5 of their last 6 games. The Raiders go 7-9. They lose to the Chiefs twice by a combined points margin of 49 points. Oh, and by the way, the Chiefs win their first Super Bowl in 49 years. Let's go on to 2020. The Raiders move to Vegas to their new stadium with a Chiefs flag buried underneath it, by the way, with a torch in the stadium, which was built by a Kansas City architecture firm. That year, they take Henry Ruggs and Damon Arnett in the first round. They miss out on illustrious free agent Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski. There's a clip that went around of Tom Brady on LeBron James's show called The Shop, where he says, "You all are going to choose that MFer over me." That MFer was Derek Carr. Dana White, the president of the UFC, tried to actively recruit Brady and Gronkowski to Las Vegas, but it didn't work. Instead, they go with Derek Carr again. They are fined over $600,000 and their 6th round pick for violating COVID policies that year. They are the only team to lose a draft pick over COVID policy violations. This is the game that they have the infamous victory lap game where they beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead, and John Gruden asked the bus driver to take them around the stadium one more time for a victory lap. That, by the way, was the only game that the Chiefs starters lost that year in the regular season. The Chiefs beat them in Vegas after leaving Travis Kelce wide open for a game-sealing touchdown. But don't worry, they collapse again, losing their final 5 of 6 games to miss the playoffs again in 2020. The Chiefs go to another Super Bowl, but fall just short. In 2021, the Raiders once again shock the draft world by taking Alex Leatherwood, a consensus guard that they viewed at tackle at pick 17. John Gruden is forced to resign after just 5 weeks for a publication of homophobic, misogynistic, and racist emails that came to light before he was the Raiders coach. 4 weeks later, after Gruden resigns, Henry Ruggs crashes into a woman driving 156 miles an hour, intoxicating, killing her and her pet both, and is immediately released. Less than a week later, Damon Arnett, another first-round pick, goes live on Instagram, brandishing a firearm and making death threats. He is also released. A few months later, Nate Hobbs, a safety, learned from Henry Ruggs' DUI arrest and got arrested for DUI himself days before the Raiders' first playoff games in years. They hire Rich Bisaccia, the special teams coordinator, who magically somehow gets them to 10-7, a feat with all this adversity no one thought possible. They lose to the Chiefs twice. They huddle on the Chiefs logo in Arrowhead to lose by a combined 66 points to the Chiefs in the 2 games. They have that crazy Chargers game where the teams can basically both go to the playoffs if they just tie in overtime. They win that game. Oh, but Derek Carr loses the only playoff game he's ever played in by throwing a game-sealing interception. 2022. The Raiders pass on Rich Bisaccia, the beloved special teams coordinator who helped them get to the playoffs, for Josh McDaniels. Yes, that Josh McDaniels. And they hired Dave Ziegler from the Patriots to impersonate the Patriot way years after Tom Brady has left New England and the championships have stopped flowing from New England. And as Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, the players that they missed out on, are winning a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. They trade for Chandler Jones, who was cut in 2023, and Devontae Adams, who was traded last week, all a part of the all-in AFC West for the 2022. They extend Darren Waller, making him the highest paid tight end in football, to play 9 games that season, and then the following season, they trade him to the Giants. They go 6-11. They miss the playoffs. They lose 3 games in which they had a 17-point lead in. They became the first team in NFL history to lose 5 or more games in a season while leading by double digits in the second half. They lose to the Chiefs twice, including a game in which they led 17-0 because Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow run into each other on the final play of the game, and Devontae Adams shoves a cameraman to the ground. They benched Derek Carr for the final 2 games of the year and told him to basically leave the facility to ensure an injury clause in his contract wouldn't go through so he could be traded, all for him to be unable to be traded. Mahomes wins MVP. The Chiefs win their 3rd Super Bowl, tying the Raiders all time with Super Bowls. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely this team got better at drafting. The answer is no. Let me read through the players that are still a part of this organization from their drafts. In 2019, the only player that is still on the roster is Max Crosby, Cleveland Farrell, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram, Trayvon Mullen, Isaiah Johnson, Foster Moreau, Hunter Renfrow, Quentin Bell, all off the team. Let's go to 2020. Henry Ruggs, Damon Arnett, Lynn Bowden, Brian Edwards, Tanner Muse, John Simpson, Amik Robertson, all off the team. That's their entire 2020 draft class. What about 2021? Alex Leatherwood, gone. Tyree Gillespie, 2021, gone. Jimmy Morosi, gone. Surely it gets better in 2022, right? Oh, they've already excommunicated Neil Farrell, who was traded to the Chiefs, and Britton Bound. But don't worry, players like Dilhan Parham and Zamir White and Matthew Butler and Thayer Munford are certainly making names for themselves. But don't worry, it certainly gets better with the 7th overall pick in 2023, Tyree Wilson, who has 3.5 sacks in his career. And Byron Young, the 3rd round pick from 2023, he's already also off the team. Let's go on to 2023. They released Derek Carr because they couldn't trade him to sign Jimmy Garoppolo, who plays a total of 6 games for them. They give Jacoby Myers, because he was a Patriot, 3 years and $33 million, despite having Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and rookie Michael Mayer, who they took with the 35th pick to get 300 yards that season. We already talked about Tyree Wilson only getting 3.5 sacks. They fired Josh McDaniels on Halloween, all to hire linebacker coach Antonio Pierce. The next week, they beat the Tommy DeVito-led Giants, and they smoke cigars and film themselves on Instagram and upload them for beating Tommy DeVito. The Raiders go on a 5-4 run that leads to Antonio Pierce getting hired. That run, a win over Tommy DeVito, a win over Zach Wilson, a loss to the Dolphins, a loss to the Chiefs, a loss to the Josh Dobbs-led Vikings, a win over Easton Stick, the infamous Christmas Day win over the Chiefs, a loss to Gardner Minshew again, eliminating them from the playoffs, and Jared Stidham and the Broncos. They center their whole season around the win that propelled the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. They still missed the playoffs after losing to Gardner Minshew. Max Crosby goes on a podcast demanding they hire Antonio Pierce. Then they watch the Chiefs dominate Vegas for 2 weeks in the Super Bowl as the Chiefs score the game-winning touchdown in the end zone with the Al Davis Church built by a Casey architecture firm with a stadium with a Chiefs flag buried underneath it, and then they went and smoked victory cigars in their locker room. The Chiefs now have won the most Super Bowls in the AFC West. Now we come to 2024. They've hired Antonio Pierce to appease Max Crosby, despite the fact that interim head coaches never work and his 5-4 record. They've signed noted dirty player Christian Wilkins to a massive contract who's already out indefinitely due to injuries. They tried to get a QB in the draft, especially Jaden Daniels, who was on the staff that Antonio Pierce coached at Arizona State, but they fail on 5 quarterbacks who were taken in the draft and instead signed Gardner Minshew because he can't eliminate them from the playoffs if he's on the team, right? Well, maybe. They take Brock Bowers, a consensus top talent in the draft at pick 13, despite taking a tight end at 35 the year prior, a putrid offensive line, a weak secondary, and they have no quarterback to throw him the ball. They go viral in the offseason for a video of a 7th-round pick safety impersonating Patrick Mahomes holding up a Kermit the Frog. They trade Devontae Adams to the Jets. Max Crosby, who begged to hire Antonio Pierce during the season, is now seen pushing coaches. They have a 2-5 record, and Pierce goes to MSNBC and talks on the record saying that he shows the Raiders clips from boxing and UFC's fights to show the aggression that he wants his defense to have. And he says he needs his team to have that type of fight of mentality towards Mahomes and the Chiefs. He said, quote, "We've got to knock the head of the snake off." 15, hate the color red, Pierce said. There's hatred for the Chiefs. All to be said, the Raiders are a miserable franchise. The Patrick Mahomes Andy Reid combination leads all-time wins of head coach and quarterback combination wins at Allegiant Stadium. So no quarterback and coach have more wins at Allegiant Stadium than Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Antonio Pierce, Aiden Connell, they have 4. With a win this week, the Chiefs can extend that lead. The Raiders' last playoff win was in 2002. That's before the invention of MySpace. The Raiders, and I cannot emphasize this enough, suck. And the Chiefs own them.
Hey, if that isn't a pre-Raiders pep talk, then I don't know what is, man. Oh, my God. There are some of those things that I had completely forgotten about. Like the John Gruden stuff, obviously. But like all that workup with Antonio Brown where it's like, oh, my helmet. I don't like my helmet. It's like, oh, that only happens at the Raiders.
It's really like 3-month span of Gruden, Arnett, Ruggs, Nate Hobbs losing the playoffs, all that was a movie. Like that's just crazy. Yeah, we need like Locker Mimosa by Mozart to be set behind that to really like set the mood for how moving it was. But it's Raiders week. We hate the Raiders and we love the Chiefs here at Arrowhead Addict. So make sure to like and subscribe this video. That's going to be it for us today. From Christian, from me, thank you for listening. Thank you to producer Richard. And as always, go Chiefs.